Hey, it's Hersh, and today I'm going to be showing you guys how I draw anime-style faces. Disclaimer, this video is not a tutorial of the basic anatomy of human structure or anything. It's literally just me showing whatever tricks I've learned along my art journey to make my process faster and easier, so with that in mind, let's get started. Starting off, we're going to be doing what pretty much every artist does when drawing a face, and that is draw a circle. If you can't draw circles, I recommend you go over that, because drawing faces is literally just drawing circles over and over and over again. Starting off with female faces first, you're going to want to make a line down the middle to divide the face and show like the middle point. Then you want to make a slight line, like maybe a third or a fourth like above the initial circle, and then one on the bottom to show where the chin will be. Then you want to draw these vertically slightly tilted like lines downward, and then another one connecting that end to the chin, and do the same on the other side. As for the neck, you want to draw two lines that are about like halfway down between the chin and the side of the face. That's just an approximation. You can obviously change these if you want. And then I'm not really going to like the lower body, but if you want, I have an updated body tutorial for you to watch. Congrats, you have the basic face shape down, and let's move on to facial features. The secret behind drawing them is literally just knowing the proportions that you're going to need. So different art styles do have different proportions, but I'm going to be basing it off of what I've seen a lot of mangakas and animes do, so let's get started. Starting off, these are the proportions for the eyes. The three middle sections are going to be like about the same width or like length each, and the two side parts are going to be like about half of that and also be equal. Then you're going to want to draw your nose about halfway between the eyes and the chin, while the mouth is halfway between the end of the nose and the chin. When drawing eyes, I recommend going step by step, like drawing the top part for both, and then the iris for both, and then the bottom, instead of working on one eye fully and then doing the next one, so that they look more similar, I guess, and that just makes the process easier for you. Obviously, it does take practice. In some cases, the eyes are not in fact sisters, not even distant cousins, and I doubt they're on the same family tree at this point, but it just takes practice, so don't worry too much about it, and just like dedicate a whole sketchbook spread to just drawing eyes from different angles if it helps you better. Now for some tricks, if you want a younger look, I recommend squishing the entire face downward so it looks more chibi-like, and basically drawing all the facial features downward so that gives the face a more softer look. I also recommend making the top part of the eye thicker than the bottom, especially for girls, since it gives that eyeliner sort of look that a lot of mangas use. And the best way to distinguish between different characters if you do have same face syndrome is by changing their facial proportions, like making their face longer or wider or their eyes smaller, things like that. The smaller things really do matter. As for the ears, they start at the top of the eyes and then at the top of the nose. When drawing the eyebrows, they also go like from the sides of the eyes, they kind of line up with them, but obviously if different characters have different eyebrow lengths, usually for my girls I make them a bit shorter and fluffier than I do for my guys. But that is pretty much it for the female face shape, and let's move on to the guys. So for male face shape, again, we're going to be starting off with a circle and a line down the middle to differentiate the two sides, and a little line like about a third or a fourth above the initial circle that we drew. The proportions are going to be about the same for females, with a few minor tweaks that I'll go over now. Starting off, these lines on the side of the face where you're drawing the initial structure are going to be a bit longer and more lean, I guess, whereas with the female faces, I tend to make them a bit chubbier and rounder. The eyes also do tend to be higher up, or you can make the nose and mouth lower down for a more mature and older look. And then also another important thing to remember is sharp jawlines. Give your guy characters jaws of steel that look like they can cut through an iceberg. Overall, I just like giving my guy characters like a leaner look, but it's important to keep in mind that this is really stereotypical. Like obviously feel free to change things around until it fits your art style and what your characters look like in your head. Like sometimes guy characters can also have a softer appearance and females may appear sharper, like there aren't any rules or anything like that. For the eyes, I usually make them more thin and long just because why not? And ditto for the eyebrows, like I mentioned before, I make them like a bit thicker and like longer so it ends past where the eyes themselves end. For the mouth, I don't actually add the top and bottom lip lines, I just add the bottom lip lines just because it adds a bit more dimension to my characters. But for the female characters, as you can notice, I did add like a top lip line as well. Anyways, after finishing the drawing, and for these two glorious models, I thought it'd be helpful to write down the anatomy of the facial structures I mentioned earlier, so here's that. Moving on to everyone's favorite, the 3/4 angle or quarter angle, whatever you guys want to call it. Starting off, we're of course going to be drawing a circle and the cross, and I want you guys to think of this like cross sort of thing as like rubber bands, so depending on the position of the circle, the rubber band angles will also change, meaning the eyes are also going to be positioned differently. For the face itself, the most important thing to know about 3/4 angle is that the chin is going to be like bumping out a lot more than it does when you're drawing the face straight on. This also depends on what character you're actually drawing, so for some characters it might draw like a lot more. For others, if you want a softer look like the one that I'm doing here, it might just be like a soft bump. Then drawing this cross will really help you guys position your eyes, and I think also starting off with the nose is nice if you're a beginner, just to map out the face since it's always at the center. The eyes are going to be slightly at an angle, so one will be a bit higher than the other, so I recommend like flipping your canvas just to make sure that the eyes do look fine. If you're a traditional artist, then maybe show it in a mirror or use a sunlight trick just so you know that it looks fine. The proportions are usually like the same as they are with the straight on face. Like the nose is always halfway between the eyes and the mouth is halfway between the nose and the chin, and now I'm just going in with lofi to make sure that the face doesn't look a bit, I don't know, weird, I guess. And I think that's why doing anatomy studies digitally really helps, because then it's easier to like track your mistakes and figure out where you can like fix things or adjust things slightly. Remember when drawing 3/4 angles that it is at an angle, so if you draw it like you would a straight face, it'll just look weird. Moving on to the male version, it's basically the same thing, except like I said earlier, I do make them a lot more like, I don't know, sharper and give them like a more leaner look. I also make the necks a bit thicker than I do with my females, and I draw the facial features a bit higher up, or I draw the eyes higher up in comparison to the nose and the mouth, just so it gives her more of like a mature look. If there's anything I want you guys to take away from this video, it's that this is probably the easiest and most used face angle out there, but that doesn't mean that there aren't more creative ways to show off with 3/4 angle. So you can obviously make the turn a lot more drastic so that the eye on the far side is like really tiny and you can barely see it. So don't like limit yourself and just draw the same angle over and over again, and also draw 3/4 angles from different sides. The trap that a lot of artists fall into is just being able to draw it from one side but not being able to draw it from the other. Moving on to what a lot of artists deem the hardest angle to draw if you're a beginner, and that's the side profile. Starting off with the classic circle and a line slanting downwards, I draw this little greater than sign facing the left, and then I draw this sort of box looking shape. I usually don't even use guidelines for drawing side profiles because they mess me up more, so I'm just simplifying it into shapes instead to kind of make the process easier for you guys to understand. You can kind of estimate where the ears are at this point, but you can fix that later on if you want to. I usually start off at the eye point and draw the nose bridging out and then bring it back in. And then a little bit farther down, I draw 2 arcs for the lips, and the middle of those arcs is where the mouth will be, and it's about halfway between the nose arc and the chin. For male characters, I make the chin angled a bit more outwards so that lines with the nose where the line is. And then for the eye, I make it kind of a little bit, almost like below the greater than sign that I drew earlier. And depending on how like wide your character's eyes are, or like the expression that you want them to be wearing, you can make the top of the eye go farther up or down, but the bottom of the eye usually stays at the same spot even if the character's eyes are closed. For the hair, I like making it fluff out a bit more, and especially if you're drawing female characters, make sure that you have hair like showing from the other side as well, just so it doesn't look like super 2D and like non-realistic in a way, and you can shade it darker if you are doing coloring. I thought I'd include a speed paint, and the drawing on the left is what I usually use as the initial structure for when I'm drawing side profiles. I think it's kind of hard because you don't have a symmetry check, so it's harder to spot mistakes, but if you use the proportions that I mentioned earlier, you should be just fine. As always, thank you guys so much for watching until the end. I'm sorry if this wasn't like really as helpful as I originally intended it to be. I found it hard to articulate my thoughts and kind of convey everything when I usually don't use guidelines or shapes, but yeah. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!